Thank you, Joey, and good evening, everybody. This is the work session for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for Tuesday, July the 14th. We're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Alderman Blanton. Apparently he's going to be absent tonight. Alderman Caesar.
Present.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger, I understand, is going to be late. Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Vice Mayor Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor is here. So next is citizen comments for items that are not on the agenda. I have speaker cards, but they all have items that are on the agenda, so we'll keep moving forward. We've got 2 event permits tonight. We're going to consider Centennial High School Homecoming Parade and the Franklin Classic sponsored by Mercy Community Healthcare. Is there any questions about those? Seeing none, we'll keep moving along. We'll go to item number 3, which is ordinance 2026-14 to reappoint Jessica Bourne as city judge for the city court of Franklin, Tennessee. Mr. Stuckey?
We have Jessica here as well. Judge Bourne is, it's hard to believe, it's been 4 years.
It has
So
been 4 years.
it's a 4-year term. It's time to look at that again. She's done an outstanding job as our city court judge, and it is staff's recommendation that she be reappointed for another 4-year term. Jessica works with her very, very closely, so I'll give her a chance to chime in as well.
Sure. Thank you, Eric, and good evening, Alderman. So I am here tonight in my capacity as City Court Clerk to recommend approval of this ordinance to reappoint Judge Bourne for another 4-year term. Her term is set to expire on September 1st, and staff has thoroughly enjoyed working with her these last 4 years. She receives a lot of compliments from the defendants that appear before her, which is not necessarily always the case for someone coming to City Court, but they find her calm demeanor and her educational approach to City Court to make it a pleasant experience, and she has expressed a desire to continue serving. So staff is recommending approval of this ordinance.
Okay, any questions or comments? Thank you. Next, we'll go to item number 4, which is ordinance 2026-19, an ordinance amending certain sections of the Franklin Municipal Code relative to e-bikes and play vehicles. I do have 2 speakers, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Stuckey, and then I'll recognize the speakers after that.
And Shauna will carry the bulk of this presentation, but we'd spoken with you a couple meetings back and gotten some initial guidance and worked with a group of citizens to get some feedback to help kind of work through some of the different topics. And what we have before you tonight is a working set of recommendations from that dialogue, and we'd love your feedback on where to go next with this, and Shauna will walk you through it.
Okay, so yeah, we had a great conversation. As it is in the summer, we had some people that couldn't make it, unfortunately, but from that conversation, I think we came up with a pretty good working start for an ordinance. This is, again, up for discussion and comment. Go on to the next slide. Again, the purpose of us looking at our municipal code now is to establish some clear regulations on bicycles. We now have the authority by state law to be able to do that. We talked before that scooters and some play vehicles actually aren't even allowed, and I know that's not the intent of the city or why we're building multi-use paths. And then, obviously, as we're thinking through this, trying to make sure that we have public safety as we've thought through where they can be, who's riding them, and what they're riding. Okay. So again, these are the 3 classifications of e-bikes. This is the description of how fast they can go. And these are the locations that we propose them to be. So Class 1 and Class 2 can be on streets, roadways, and signed multi-use paths. And then Class 3 would only be allowed on streets and roadways, but never sidewalks, but also not on multi-use paths if we didn't actually, I don't think we actually said that, but we'll make sure that that's clear. And then, of course, age 16 and under, you have to wear a helmet for all classes, and then helmets are always required for Class 3. E-scooters and motorcycles, we kind of talked a little bit about defining those as well. So e-scooters would also be allowed on streets, roadways, signed multi-use paths, prohibited on sidewalks, but that's something I want you guys to think about if you want e-scooters on sidewalks. We I think when we talked internally, we thought that there was a safety aspect to how fast they can go. Because people who might be on a sidewalk might be walking leisurely or having a stroller, and motorized vehicles could be dangerous on a sidewalk. Not a multi-use path, just a sidewalk. And then e-scooters would be equipped with reflectors, which they already have when they are purchased. So it's just keeping them on there. Motorcycles and e-motorcycles, the way we're addressing this, the state law already provides for motorcycles and e-motorcycles, so we're saying we just follow the law. Again, operators must be 16 or older to ride. They do require a license. Helmets are always required, and any violations would be subject to state law citations. The others might be municipal court, but motorcycles are a state law issue. Again, play vehicles were not really allowed in the city. So what we propose is to allow all play vehicles on public streets, roadways, and sidewalks, and prohibiting them still in public buildings, public places, and our garages. So you can't roller skate in the garage, down, if someone might want to do that. And I'm sure they would. This is very specific to non-motorized play vehicles. So if you have, the one thing that we didn't talk about, and it was brought to my attention by one of the police officers, are Segways. And I think a Segway is probably more akin to a scooter. So we might want to put that in with the scooter regulations. And we hadn't talked about that. It wasn't really, I didn't really think about Segways, but we probably should do that.
It's motorized. So
It is
treat
motorized.
it like the other motorized. Yep.
Okay. And so safety requirements that are in the code, again, follow all state rules, regulations, city traffic ordinances, the helmet issue, proper seating. So a lot of this is already in state law, but you can only have riders that are allowed. You can't carry packages or bundles unless the bicycle is prepared to do that. You can't really put it on the handlebars unless you have a basket. Ensure that the bikes, e-bikes, and e-scooters have reflectors. They come with them, we've been told, so they should just keep them on there. And then, of course, comply with vehicle capacity. Oh, wrong way. There we go. So I'd kind of like to hear your thoughts, a little bit of discussion on where we are. In a second, I think we have loaded in here the video that the police has done. I'd like to play that if you're okay with it. And then I would like to show you what the police have already put out that shows the difference between an e-motorcycle and an e-bicycle. And there are vast differences. And one of the things that we learned when we talked with the group was that parents just aren't being told. They're buying these bicycles on Amazon. They don't know. And it doesn't really say what they're purchasing. When you know what you're looking for, it's clear. But if you don't know, then you don't know. And so where there was talk and maybe some requests that we go out and talk to some of the local people who sell. Now, we can't do anything about the online purchases, but for the local establishments that sell e-bikes and e-motorcycles, asking them to share some of this information with their customers so they know what they're buying.
And we have some that already do that, are very responsible
Yes.
in getting that information out. And there are others maybe less so. So we just want to make sure there's at least maybe a level expectation in terms of getting that information out and opportunity to share information with folks. And big thank you to our police department who's worked hard to get some extra communication out through various social media channels to help communicate some of these differences and some of the needs and to create better awareness about what's out there and some of the risks. So it'd be great to show the video if we could.
Sarah, let me go down and do the mic down there.
Okay.
When we're in our own city hall,
Expand it.
we'll be able to manage sound.
Yeah. Yeah, we're looking forward to the technology upgrades.
Yes.
Alright, let's give this a try and see if that works, and if not, we'll. Give us just 1 second.
Well, you may just have to wait and be excited when you get home to follow the link.
We could have Casey do a voiceover.
Yeah, here we go.
But before you do,
Hi, I'm Officer Jared Anderson with the Franklin Police Department Traffic Unit. E-bikes are becoming very popular throughout Franklin, and it's a great way to get around. But before you do, it's important to get to know the rules. There are 3 classes of e-bikes. Class 1 and Class 2 can reach speeds of up to 20 miles per hour. Class 3 e-bikes can reach up to 28 miles per hour and have additional requirements. One rule that's easy to remember, e-bikes are not allowed on sidewalks in Franklin. Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes are allowed on the streets and bike paths. Class 3 e-bikes are allowed on streets only, and riders must be at least 16 years old. Riders under 16 must wear a helmet on Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes, while helmets are required for everyone riding a Class 3. It's also important to know that e-bikes, motorized bicycles, and e-moto or motor scooters are not the same. Each has different rules for where they can be ridden and what equipment, registration, or licensing may be required. Knowing the difference can help you stay safe and avoid a citation. To learn more about the different vehicles and how the rules apply in Franklin, please visit this QR code. Ride smart and ride safe. We'll see you on the road.
Then we have that little guy.
Oh, the
Don't
attachment.
we have the best public service?
I mean, we really do.
ever?
I do want to show you this.
It's a PSA.
Yeah. This PSA was done before we actually started even drafting our ordinance. Chief thought it was important to go ahead and get it out, and I agree. Yeah, that's kind of skinny, but so it shows what the bikes kind of look like. So when you're a parent and you're getting ready to buy one, what the picture of one might look like, and for mostly you're looking for pedals. Like can it be pedaled on its own? And then obviously all of the requirements for each of those types of vehicles. I think this is a great PSA. It's already gone out publicly. People are already seeing it. We didn't think we could wait too long because there's nothing really we can do about e-motos as far as regulating them. And I think from the data we've gotten, it's mostly e-motorcycles that are causing issues.
Okay. Let's hear the public speakers. Kathy Fultner and Kim Harris, if you'll come up and line up, and you have 2 minutes each, please.
You're there.
I've got Kathy Fultner first. Is that you?
That's me.
Okay. Speak into the microphone, kind of pull it a little closer if you would.
Hello? Okay. I'm Kathy Fultner. I am a Franklin resident, and I am an e-bike owner, and I've ridden over 6,000 miles in the last 5 years on mostly Franklin, Leapers Fork, Tennessee for sure roads. I reviewed the proposal. I was part of the committee remotely. I unfortunately had surgery and couldn't attend. And I do have about a half a dozen comments. For clarity, and since this new e-bike section of the law is a new section, I would include the federal definition, which is also the Tennessee definition of the 3 classes of e-bikes in this particular document. Too many residents are unaware that e-motos do not meet any of the 3 classifications of e-bikes. You might also mention that if an e-bike does not meet the definition of e-bike, it is considered an e-moto, a mini motorcycle, whatever language you choose. And it is regulated under the motorcycle section of the law. The ordinance does include part of that in the last whereas, but it misses the fact that an e-moto is not an e-bike, which is a common mistake made by a lot of consumers. In Section 1, signed multi-use paths, does the city plan to install allowed multi-use path signs? For example, the multi-use paths along New 96 and McHatcher. I believe the current Tennessee law references multi-use paths that run adjacent to roadways are allowed. How will riding an e-bike on a multi-use path be enforced as the ordinance is written. E-bikes should be allowed on multi-use paths by default. E-motos should not. Do you really want to force e-bikes onto roads like McCatcher with 45-mile-an-hour speed limits? Obviously, both drivers and e-bikers are going to be unhappy. The city has the right to exclude certain paths as needed, so they should be allowed unless they're marked. A little bit different than what the current rule says. Section 3, helmets should be required for those under 16 years of age riding e-scooters. They too should be allowed on multi-use paths that run along roadways. Sections 6 through 9 do not specifically mention e-bikes. Again, for clarity, I would add e-bike or change what is written bicycle to e-bicycle. I'm not sure of your intent in these sections. Do these sections include bicycles as well? I do think they should. I'm not clear of the details in the eliminated section of the law, or if this ordinance now includes bicycles as well as e-bikes. And a bicycle is not an e-bike. So if you don't mention e-bike, somebody's going to read this and go, oh, that doesn't include me.
You'll be winding up,
I'm sorry?
right here. I said if you'll be winding up. You
Okay.
well exceeded 2
Section
minutes.
8 should include e-bikes, e-scooters, et cetera, everything in the ordinance. It only mentions bicycle. And finally, if this ordinance is to apply to bicycles, mention bicycles in all the applicable sections of the ordinance. I appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback. Thank you.
Come on up, Kim.
Hi. Hello, thanks for allowing
You'll
me
pull
to.
that microphone just a little bit closer, please. Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah. Well, hello, and thanks for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Kim Harris, and I'm a Franklin resident, and I have been riding e-bikes for 13 years, and I'm here representing the e-bike community. First of all, I want to say thank you to the mayor and all of you aldermen for not rushing into any new ordinances pertaining to e-bikes without the full understanding of what e-bikes are, who ride them, where they are ridden, and how they are different from e-motos. With that being said, there are many people who rely on their e-bikes for many different reasons. Some of us are leisurely riders using the trails. Some of us are commuters riding to work or school. Some of us are handicapped and ride for pleasure or out of necessity because we cannot drive and will never be able to. Some of us ride a bike because we find it more feasible than owning and driving a car, and some of us are seniors who ride for exercise or even at the recommendation of our physicians. No matter which one of these categories we fall under or use our e-bikes for, it would be detrimental to many of us if any of our existing privileges as e-bike riders are taken away. We need to be able to use all the existing multi-use paths and bike lanes and ride on any streets and roads where these paths and lanes do not exist to connect us to our destinations, whether that be going to work or to run an errand, or taking a leisurely ride or meeting a friend for dinner. It could be something as simple as following the doctor's orders. As Class 1 and 2 e-bike riders, our average speed is typically 12 to 14 miles per hour, and as Class 3 e-bike riders, who are typically our road commuters, our average speed is 22 to 25 miles per hour. Whether we are riding Class 1, 2, or 3, we all have an invested interest in riding safely by respecting road and trail rules. As I mentioned, I am representing the e-bike community and not the e-moto community, as there is a huge difference between the two. It is clear that they are most often classified as the same thing, and it is paramount that everyone be educated on their differences and that the correct terminology is used by everyone, including lawmakers, emergency room and medical staff, police and journalists who almost 100% of the time refer to e-motos as e-bikes and misrepresent the facts. Seems like every article, every newscast that I hear or read, the information is incorrect. I will say that the Franklin Police Department has been doing a great job trying to educate the public on the differences between the two and the responsibilities of ownership. In order for these new ordinances to be understood and followed, Everyone is going to need to know what category their mobility device falls under and the rules and regulations for operating it and where it can be ridden. Again, whatever this looks like, education is a must. I have been doing my part and will continue to do so as much as possible, whether it be through teaching classes, sharing information, or answering questions. I was fortunate to have a seat on the city's e-bike committee for updating the ordinance for all mobility devices, electric and non-electric, whether it be bikes, roller skates, scooters, skateboards, one-wheels, and etc. Thank you for allowing me to have a seat on that committee, bringing my knowledge of e-bikes and other e-mobility devices to the table. From what was presented here this evening, I feel that the proposed new ordinance would be fairly updated to include all mobility devices beyond the ordinance 2026-19 with some clarifications. Therefore, no additional ordinances would be needed. We just need to enforce as much as is possible the two guidelines presented in the newly proposed ordinance and the already existing law. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, board. Alderman Brown, and then I've got Alderman Potts.
I guess the one thing I'm sort of curious about is relative to the sidewalks in the multi-use pass. Some people may understand riding around if they're on a sidewalk or a multi-use path, but others may not. I mean, some of our paths look like sidewalks and some of our and not. And so I think to the point that Ms. Fultner made is I think signage is probably going to be pretty key if we're going to actually ensure that we leave our paths open to e-bikes but yet protect other areas. And so I think that was one of your questions is how do we open up multi-use paths but maybe protect pedestrian sidewalks in maybe a neighborhood or something. I think that I don't know how else you would do that other than signage, just given the fact that especially kids would probably not know the difference on what they were on.
Yeah, and it's whether or not they can be on a multi-use path, because sidewalks we would say no, and it's when are you now on a multi-use path and which one is appropriate. So it would be on us to sign it. I think we would work with Parks and Max and come up with like proper signs and where. And we've talked about even before this. I talked with Max about like a share the road kind of or share the path. So people know it's a multi-use paths are wide, but you still have to share them and be courteous when you're passing someone and that kind of thing. But yeah, signage is important.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. I had a question for Shauna, and then I've got a couple of comments as well. Could you share with those that aren't in the room who may not know who made up the committee? And Eric, you may be able to speak to this as well, just for everybody's, so they understand who we tried to draw from, and we appreciate both of you speaking tonight as well.
Yeah, we had a number of folks from homeowners associations that several of you recommended. We had some other folks like Kim who works in this business and is a advocate in that way as well. Ned Dannenberg, who you all know from Walk Bike Franklin, was also part of that. I think there were 8 or 9 HOA representatives, maybe even a little more, that were on the list. We had some, not everybody could make it. We had, I guess, 4 or 5 of us in person, and then some folks that came in virtually. And so walked through it together. Shauna did a great job sort of facilitating the discussion. Chief Faulkner was there as well, and I was part of that discussion as well. So what we brought to you tonight is really a reflection of that general dialogue and as much a consensus as we had amongst the group that we thought we could bring forward and things we wanted to maybe give you an opportunity to give us more guidance and feedback on. So hope that answers your question. I have all the names somewhere, but I can share that with the group if you'd like. But it was a pretty broad group.
That's great. That's what I just wanted the public to hear. And I do think that it's great that we were able to verify that reflectors do come on the majority, if not all, of these bikes when they're purchased. I did really appreciate, and I actually listed it, and then I saw it on the screen, is the QR code. I think that's a great push with the Franklin Police Department, with the bike team, as well as with our communications department, is to see if we can actually promote that at our local bike stores so that people can walk up to the desk or anywhere else and then scan that and be able to have it on their phone. The as I was listening to some of the things that were said and thinking about the fact that e-bikes it's a brand new area for the city of Franklin, I do have some concerns that we may be missing some things as we move forward because this is new with some unintended consequences. So I'm actually going to recommend that we revisit this in about a year. We're going to pass whatever we do now, but I want us to come back and revisit in a year and say, what were our successes? What are our opportunities if we need to make some changes? Because this is new technology, and I think it's going to continue to evolve, and we need to stay ahead of the curve.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
So I want to be clear. So thank you for presenting and digging into this. The Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, the signed multi-use paths. I gotta understand. I guess I just need to understand. Like, why can't they all map multi-use path? I don't know. Like, what would make a multi-use path unacceptable for e-bike usage? I guess is what it seems like it would be. I don't know. We designed them for multi-use, so I kind of wonder why the signage is even, frankly, required on those.
I
Like,
think it's how we define it, and I'm not 100% sure how we define all of our paths. So, for example, we have a horse path at Harlansdale. I don't know what we call that. Do we call it a multi-use path? I don't know, but if we do internally,
well, they
then
can't
we
be
certainly
used in
don't want
parks.
that.
Well, they can't be used in parks though.
So, like, we need to think about what do we call it? What is it, and how did we define it? So this, when we implement this, we are going to have to think about looking at our multi-use paths and making sure that we know which ones make sense. Because if you're coming from a neighborhood and you can use a multi-use path to get you to a park, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're thinking about. But then when you're in the park, we have different types of paths, and so we want to make sure we're marking the right ones, which is why we said signed multi-use paths. It should be clear. Like, if we're going to get you to the park, there's going to be a path for you.
I guess I just don't want us to have to put up about 100 more signs around here.
No, it wouldn't be. I don't think it would be.
Well, I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But I think that there's some just kind of. I don't know that we need to have a sign that says you can drive this thing on the Matt Hatcher multi-use path. I mean, and so I see what you're saying. There could be some exceptions, but like the things I'm thinking about, the 12-foot, 10-foot multi-use paths, I think those just should be allowed. They don't necessarily have to have signs on them. I could be convinced otherwise.
You want to answer his comment?
My only comment was, we would say that what goes down along 96 is a multi-use trail. Some people might look at that and say, that looks like a sidewalk. If we say you can't ride them on a sidewalk, some people may look at that and say, wait, I got to be on the street. I can't be on that sidewalk. How are we communicating to people that that's actually an allowed place to ride? You don't have to get down on the road on 96. How are we communicating to people that that's an appropriate multi-use trail? Because some of our trails look like sidewalks and some of our sidewalks are sidewalks. That's my point.
No, Mayor?
Brothers too.
Go ahead. No, that's good. And I agree. And I would think Max could probably look into some.
Yes.
Yeah, you drive into Nashville and there's all kinds of colors on sidewalks and it's not necessarily signs, but things that identify. I mean, the bike lanes are green going across something. I don't know what all the colors mean, but they mean something to people that use them. And so maybe we look at that. I guess I'm just wanting to prevent kind of there's more signs. If we don't have to have them, maybe there's some other ways. I hear what you're saying. I want to make it maximum usability for these things on multi-use paths, except for the 3s, which are very fast and they need to be on the street. Thank you.
Alderman Caesar.
Glad that Alderman Baggett put that qualifier except for 3s at the end, because just today, and I'm sure this isn't new, I could have gone into any neighborhood chat meeting and read about an e-bike issue within the past 7 days, but there just happened to be one today. And it was a neighbor that was walking down a sidewalk, and her dog were almost bowled over coming around the corner in an e-bike. I don't know if it was class 1, class 2, or class 3, but a bicycle going 20 miles an hour around the corner on a 4-foot or 6-foot sidewalk is a recipe for disaster, especially when it's being steered by a young person or an old person that may not be fully comfortable with stopping or yielding, and also may not have the capacity to think about anticipation. Which brings me to my first point. Education is so critical here, and I think the city has recently gotten pretty noisy about this in a good way. I would encourage us to continue to be noisy about this from the police department and from other retailers. You guys, as retail partners here, you do a great job, but unfortunately, not everybody's buying these e-bikes from a reputable retailer. So we need to work together. I guess another question beyond education is to provide clear guidelines. And I think this tool in that same chat thread where they were talking about the woman almost being bowled over with her dog and she had to dive out of the way. And this is an older woman walking her dog for recreation. And the kid literally closed his eyes and ran into the grass. So I think that's an education, right? Accidents are going to happen, and our job is to protect it. We know that these accidents are going to happen. Our job is to try to stay ahead of it and provide clear guidance to parents so they can do that. And I wonder how often our police officers today or to date are getting called out for e-bike related concerns. And if so, what are the results of those? Because right now we're saying, hey, this is what we think is the problem. This is what we think we're solving it for. I'd rather look at the data that we have so far. Where are they actually interacting with police and law enforcement, and then maybe make sure, and maybe you did that in the small group breakout, but I haven't heard that from my ears. So can you help us with a little bit of that, Shauna?
I don't have any data yet, but we can definitely get that. This is exactly what we're talking about, about the sidewalks and making sure that, most neighborhood sidewalks are not multi-use paths. And that's just the reality of it. So, I mean, what we're really saying is if you have an e-bike, it stays on the road, and the sidewalks are meant for pedestrians who are going slower. And that's, a safety issue.
Let us see what we can pull
Yeah,
together
so I think-
related to that. And also, there is a greater awareness than there was even just a year ago. So that's something for us to look at. And also, as we go forward, maybe just a little more intentionality around tracking that at maybe a little higher level of detail.
I'd like to see some pre-data. Let's put clear guidance out there and see what enforcement looks like so that we can see if we're actually impacting that in a positive way. And then the final piece is around signage. And I think Alderman Baggett makes a good point. I don't want to see 1,000 signs up to destroy our natural paths. However, I would be a strong proponent, and I've been this strong proponent since the beginning. And Kim, you shared that the average for class 2 and class 3 is somewhere between 12 and 14 miles an hour. I still have concerns of an e-bike on a multi-use path going 20 miles an hour beside me. And so maybe in addition to the share of the road, maybe we give some direct guidance on what sharing the road safely looks like. Not only so that we can control the e-bikes, but so that for the pedestrians that might also be occupying that multi-use path, if unfortunately they are hit by one of those e-bikes, there's good science out there to say what speed reduces traumatic harm to that person. And maybe we use that to help inform e-bike riders. Now, not all of them have speedometers, but it gives our police and our law enforcement a little bit more judgment perhaps to enforce careless behavior on a multi-use path. Thank you.
Alderman Berger.
Thank you. You've got adults and you've got kids, and adults act differently on these than kids. Kids are really reckless on these things, and that's my concern. We're not even talking about the difference here. And just today, I was outside trimming some bushes this morning, and 3 boys on Liberty Pike, which is a 35 mile an hour speed limit, came by in their no pedals. So what is that? Motorized? E-moto. Because I looked up and I thought, yep, this is the e-moto. So they were going very fast up Liberty Pike and weaving in and out, weaving into the other lane, and then one guy did a wheelie. He pulled his bike up and just went like a whole block. I kept watching. I wish I had my phone. I would have recorded that. It would have been interesting to watch. I'm like, we've got to figure this out because we've got kids that are going to do this stuff. And we already had fatality down in Spring Hill. I don't want that to happen here. I don't want that to happen anyplace else either. So I think we're going to have to look into how we do this with our kids because kids are kids. And then share the path kind of thing, yeah, fine. But like when you're in a different country at this time, but they had like a multimodal path and all their bicycles, motorized bicycles and scooters, they had small scooters, they all have to be on one side. They can't be on two sides. You can't be in the middle. They have to be on one side, just like you do on the road. Driving up the road, you're going out your subdivision, you're on the right side. So we need to make sure maybe that they all stay on one side. If they want to ride these paths, I don't know if it's Carmel or someplace else, but there was a path I remember seeing, and there was a line. And any bike or any scooter that went down, they had to be within those two lines, just like on the bike lanes. So everybody else felt safe walking outside that lane because they didn't have to swerve in and out. People didn't have to honk a bike horn or saying, coming through. They were always on that one line. So we might talk about that. The other thing is there's a lot of classifications here. I don't know how we keep up with them all and how we distinguish constantly about them. But I had, then we have kids coming down the alley. In McKay's Mill, my neighbor almost got run over. She jumped out of the way. They're coming down the alley, just screaming down the alley, and the alley is 15 miles an hour. They were going a lot faster than that. So we've got issues to consider too when we're looking at that.
Yeah. Alderman Caesar, follow up?
Alderman Baggett mentioned that these e-bikes weren't allowed in the parks, and he may, and I don't know if that's what you were meaning for me to hear, or if that was part of the ordinance for e-bikes. And maybe I misunderstood a comment you made.
Yeah, no, they would be allowed in the parks.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that.
So we're allowing no play vehicles are allowed in the parks,
Right now they're not. We
Now
are
they're
going
not.
to.
but we're allowing e-bikes in the
We
parks
would allow them going forward.
on the streets and multi-use
Play
paths.
vehicles. Yes.
Play vehicles, that's fine.
They're actually not allowed hardly anywhere.
Anywhere.
So we're establishing that.
I'm saying that it's not. Then maybe this needs to be added. I don't believe you should be able to take your e-bike or of any class really and ride up to Fort Granger on it. Not that you would, that'd be impossible. But like
Yeah, and I
riding
don't-
around in the grass, around in the horse paths.
Yeah, it would have to be a signed multi-use path. So
We
that
have
would
paths
not
in
be
the
that.
park.
But these are not like off-road vehicles,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do
So
that.
I think that's the thing I was referring to, is the off-road areas
Yeah,
in the
got it.
parks. So maybe we need to make specific that
Yeah.
none are allowed off. I don't know. Y'all can figure out how to word it. But I think you get
I think
that.
we know where you're
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
You got one last
Yeah, what-
follow-up
yeah.
before I go to the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
item?
So what about moms and dads out on a sidewalk, okay, pushing a stroller, and their other two kids are behind them on their little bikes. One's got training wheels and one doesn't have the training wheels. And he's got a little bicycle. He's 7 years old. You're not gonna put that kid in the street. You're gonna put him right behind mom and dad, or right in front of mom and dad. And that's a bicycle. It's not supposed to be on the sidewalk. We have a problem with that. We gotta figure that one out too.
So electronic bicycles. We're not talking about like bicycles.
Okay, any bicycle, if I was riding a bicycle, could I ride on a sidewalk?
Yeah.
Okay, we can still do that.
Yeah, this is
We're
not
not
addressing
taking
like your use of a bicycle. This
We're
is
not messing with that.
yeah, we're not changing any of that. We're just talking about
Okay,
faster.
yeah, okay, I just wanna make sure, because I wasn't sure I understood that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good.
Item 5 is capital investment plan quarterly update and rubrics for future capital projects evaluations.
So one of the things we've committed to do is provide you with update on capital projects, where we are in terms of their progress. We also do want to share with you some additional work we've done around a framework to evaluate projects going forward. One of the things we heard from the board in our last CIP update was a desire to better understand projects, get more data, help differentiate them more effectively. And so we've worked on a framework, pulling from some other resources to help with that. So that'll be part of tonight's presentation, and we'll also touch on some additional work on the sidewalk gap component of some of the work we do. So Michael's going to kick it off, but we have a team ready to walk through these elements with you tonight. So take it away, Michael.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Michael Walters Young, your Chief Budget and Performance Officer. With me are Paul Holtzen and Max Baker, and we're going to kind of tag team this presentation, but keep it moving because we know there's a long agenda still ahead. So this really will fall into three components. I'm going to spearhead giving you project updates and sort of where we are with the projects as well as spending to date. And then Paul and Max are going to take care of a process improvement. You asked us to go back and start looking at a way that you could rank future projects via data-driven decision-making, and they've been working very hard on both transportation-related and multimodal-related projects. And then Max will close with reviewing the Sidewalk Gap initiative and some public outreach that we're doing for that. So I wanted to take a moment and just remind you of your completed projects. Last time we did this was in February. It's now July. You have completed 18 projects in the last 6 years, totaling $78.3 million. Public investment, 7 parks, 6 transportation, 4 general services, and 2 stormwater projects. Ongoing, you see here, of course, very small, the scorecard. This is sort of the heat map, if you will, that shows where we are with each project that is on your over $450 million capital investment plan, design, right-of-way bidding, construction, or fully completed. So let me give you quick updates on each of the projects that are still under construction. First is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer home raising project. This has been in the books for quite some time. As of this moment in time, we have 5 that are complete, 2 which are near complete, 2 which are permitted, and 1 which are working to still sign. The project is closed to any new applications. A reminder as well that once all contracts are signed and work is agreed to, we'll know exactly how much the federal share, the homeowner share, and of course the city share is, and any of that $1.8 million that we've allocated in the CIP that we're not needing to spend on this will fall back into the CIP for reappropriation to other needs and projects as they may come up. Second is new City Hall. We have spent roughly $39.2 million to date. The guaranteed maximum price is just over $95 million, the information shown on the screen. So it was presented in April at your work session. And the crane comes down
At the end of July.
at the end of July. So you're looking for the next skyline change to the city of Franklin. It will be at the end of July. The Pearl has 2 main components, of course. One is Robinson Lake, and the other is the Southeast Park itself. To date, we have spent $33.1 million on these 2 projects combined. We expect that Robinson Lake actually will be open this year, hopefully in October, a little earlier than 2027. And the Pearl is set to open at this point in time in March of 2028. East McEwen Phase 4, $16.3 million has been spent to date. That is on target to open sometime around April of 2028. Lewisburg Sidewalk to Collins Farm has been bid. We still anticipate construction starting in the next several months. That will require some degree of closures along that roadway with an anticipated completion date, of 2027. Liberty Park, the bridge has been bid, so that will get underway very soon. We've spent $564,000 to date. Irrigation replacements and then park improvements will happen after that. We would expect the park to be completed again in 2028. Projects which are in still right-of-way acquisition and bidding, these have not changed, just slightly more money has been spent. Old Peytonsville and Long Lane Connector, $9.5 million has been spent to date over the project estimate of $28.2 million, with the completion date still being targeted in 2030. And East McEwen Phase 5 will commence As soon as East McEwen Phase 4 is done, with an anticipated completion date in 2030, $1.95 million has been spent to date. Of the 17 projects which are in design, 2 of them are currently being out to bid. One is the Del Rio Pike culvert replacement, and the other is the Mac Hatcher Parkway and Hillsborough Road intersection. There are 8 projects of that 17 which are under design. It's at various stages and levels. Any questions on existing projects?
Alderman Brown.
Appreciate that Mac Hatcher Hillsborough Road striping is on 2027, but when we talked about a couple of projects with expediency, we also talked about Franklin Road, Mac Hatcher, 2032 does, I'm not an engineer, I don't even play one on TV, but that does not sound like expediency. That seems like a long way off. I'm sure it takes a while, but that doesn't feel like the urgency that we sort of talked about. So I would love to.
So Franklin Road from Mac Hatcher to Mallory Station?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to bring back options. We're finishing up the traffic analysis to bring you. And we're going to bring you 3 different options and say, hey, if you pick this option, let's say we just do one northbound lane, you might get 7 to 10 years out of it. If you go with a full 5-lane section, you're expected to get 20 to 30 years out of the longevity of that. So that schedule, while we're pushing it as hard as we can, is really largely going to depend on how much right-of-way acquisition we have to do, how many septic fields are we going to hit in the process, and working through the complexity of some of those infrastructure decisions. So it's really hard to say. If it ends up we just do one northbound lane, I think we could probably expedite it because the golf course will be the main right-of-way acquisition. One track's way easier than 20 to 30 tracts of land. But it is underway. I really hope to bring it forward in the next few months to present those options.
Okay.
As soon as the traffic study's done, it'll be in your hands to make a decision.
So the scope you choose will drive the timeline for completion of that project. So that's still something you'll help determine when that comes back to you in a few months.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Vice Mayor, do you have a brain thought?
Yeah, so we're looking at something else this afternoon or this evening that would take possibly the place of some of these, right, funding capacity. The Carruthers sidewalk.
Potentially, yes.
Well, it's about an $800,000 project. It can fall in your operating capital funding or your CIP. It's kind of one of those sort of below the typical line that triggers a full CIP.
Yeah.
So and one of the things you may remember we talked about is having some funding available for opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we're looking at that. And we sort of crafted the financial impact on that one carefully because we're going to be opportunistic where those dollars are. But it's really less from this group than.
That's exactly what. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank goodness we're not changing that. Go ahead. Who's next?
Okay, so we heard you loud and clear last time is that you wanted more data as we evaluate some of these different roadway infrastructure projects. Luckily, we have Max Baker, who used to do some of this at the MPO, so he's helped guide me and get me to the point where we're at now. And so what we've looked at, again, we're not trying to make up a new process. We've modeled it after how Nashville MPO does it, is looking at breaking it up into 5 categories: state of good repair, economic opportunity, road safety, congestion management, and project readiness. And we are open to the feedback you have. You'll notice that there's a percentage underneath it and it just says X. So right now they're all equal percentage. What they've done at the Nashville MPO was they took it through, we'll go to the next slide, a pairwise comparison, which I'd never done one of these before, but essentially, it allows you, if you want to weight one factor heavier than the other, you can compare it. And so, if you're interested in doing it this way, you could compare them as you go across. So, state of good repair versus roadway safety, and you can select which one's more important to you, and then so forth, and continue the comparison. And then, essentially, what it does is it gives you a percentage score at the bottom, and we can take the combined score of the board to see truly what is most important to you guys as a board of mayor and aldermen. And so while some of you may have roadway safety very high on your list, others may look at congestion management. And so that's one way that we can look at this. So once we put all the data together. So let's go through the data that we're getting ready to collect and have already started on a lot of it. So state of good repair, essentially the categories that we came up with is looking at functional classification, the ADT, the annual average daily traffic on a road, or the reoccurring maintenance needs. In our opinion, higher class facilities have higher performance standards, and a failing arterial has a much larger impact on the system and therefore would score higher in our scoring system that we put together. If there's a major utility, water and sewer needs to put in a sewer line or a new water line or gas line down that roadway, it would start to get a higher score as we go through the prioritization process. Moving to the next slide. Roadway safety. This is my first shot at really looking at big data and pulling big data. It took a little bit of time for me to get used to, but we have access to a program called AASHTO-WARE. And with AASHTO-WARE, we can look at crash data throughout the state of Tennessee. And so a lot of these where we're pulling the big data, we've broken it up into different percentiles. So if there's a high crash rate above 90% to 100%, it would get the maximum score. And then 75 to 90, 50 to 75, 25 to 50, 10 to 25, 0 to 10% is kind of how we did that, is look at statewide crash data, and depending on where Franklin roadways fall, would depend on how that gets scored. And so we could look at crash rates, the severe crash rate, which is fatalities and serious accidents. So if they're having fatalities and serious accidents, it would increase the scoring that it would have. Also, another big thing is looking at vulnerable road user risk. So do we have bike and pedestrian access accidents happening on that segment of roadway? Let's say we don't have that. Do we actually have bike and ped facilities, or is it partially there? And so we have a scoring system that if there's no accidents and there's sidewalks already there, it wouldn't get many points. If you have more than 2 vulnerable road users accidents in a certain period of time, it would score extremely high on that segment. And again, we're using AASHTO-WARE to pull that data from. Economic opportunities, another big one. Primarily, we would look at how does this project support areas of identified growth, whether it be through Envision Franklin, or you guys remember going through the short-term, midterm, long-term growth areas, and how does this project improve access to major employment centers or potentially future employment centers. A little bit of that is subjective, and what we would do is get together probably with the planning department, other stakeholders, and try to come up with a scoring for the proposed projects that are being looked at, so we can get a bunch of different perspectives and end up with a score. Congestion management is the next category. So with this, we're using data from INRIX, which is essentially pulling from cell phone data, GPS data, etc. And you can look at things such as travel time index, planning time index, level of travel time reliability, which I can explain all those if you're interested. And we can also then, for intersections, look at average control delay, 3-minute delay count, and total observed delay. So that data is not something any individual staff member is making up. We're pulling it straight from the system that is tracking the data. Next slide is about physical stewardship, is how much funding has already been invested in the project. Have we invested a substantial amount that we should continue down that route? Does the project leverage grants, TDOT funding, or partnership contributions? For example, on the regional transportation plan, where does it fall within that plan? If it's in that tip, it should score very, very high. If it's not even in that regional transportation plan, it would score very, very low. Is there a partnership we're doing with a private development? So we could use those factors in how we also rank it. So going to the last slide, ultimately, what that would do is give us a framework for the star rating, which is the exact same thing. Lowest priority 1 star, highest priority 4. At the end of the day, the data is presented to you as a board. You would still have to make a decision on what projects move forward. Now, I've run through the scoring, and it seems to work really, really well. There are some projects that just don't score high, that you may seem, hey, as a board, we need to do this project. An example is Southwest Mac Hatcher is not going to score very high ever because it doesn't exist today. There's no traffic problem over there today, and so the scoring doesn't always work out perfect for those new type roadways. However, you as a board may say this has got to be our highest priority. So it still gives you the flexibility as a board to have those discussions, but it does give you a lot of great data to try to come to a conclusion and develop concurrence amongst yourself. Now, the one thing we proposed to do or talked about doing was, well, how good of a job did staff do with the scoring? You may not like the way we have it set up. You may love it. So what the next step would be is to maybe take our existing capital projects, throw them through the scoring and let you look at it. Does this calculator seem to make sense the way it's scoring? We could also then show you how the pairwise comparison can impact how those get ranked. But this is a lot of data that we would pull together and really just looking for your feedback on the direction we're headed with it. And this would primarily be for roadways, corridors, and intersection projects.
So I might add to Paul's suggestion is maybe we take a sampling of some projects that you're familiar with and see how they score as opposed to trying to do a massive group of projects. Maybe just give you a sense. And I think we want to use the pairwise to help us sort out the relative weighting of those. And that might be something we can do as well. And you see how that rolls through a sample group of projects. That might be something worthwhile in doing as we think about how we want to manage projects and help differentiate them from one another and help you have the best understanding you can as you're making these important decisions.
Alderman Peterson.
It's also thinking about some things like Southwest Mac Hatcher, if we have other developments that would add money into that, I think that is something for us to consider also. I mean, that's just the first one I thought of that they've got the potential.
So we would score that higher in the funding leverage if there was private development that was going to contribute to it. And that should absolutely be considered.
Alderman Berger.
Yeah, so with this scoring or in this program, would it help us to figure out how a project with all those criteria in it would also affect something that's upstream or downstream, traffic-wise, congestion-wise, things of that nature? So if we did an intersection or did a portion of a road somewhere, how that, half mile to mile away might affect another area and improve it.
This scoring won't necessarily tell you that, but we should be able to understand that and figure that out as we define the projects.
You could figure that out after
Yeah.
we would do the scoring.
Yes.
Okay, and if we did economic impact, I would think that we'd also want to talk to the chamber and maybe have them pool some of their larger employees with a lot of, some of those 770,000 people that come in here every day, how that plays out. So we could talk with them as well, because you would want to, pool, you would want to talk to those people, and maybe the chamber would be a big help. And then the fiscal stewardship, I see a great opportunity sometimes when a developer comes in to do a project and they're going to be in the roadway, or they're going to be fixing a road, or they're going to be adding to the roadway or the capacity or the turn lanes or whatever, and we have something nearby, it just makes sense to get it all done in that area. So hopefully that allows us to tweak that as well when we put the information in there.
Yes, I would say it does. I would also say that when a development comes forward, their traffic impact study basically directs them what to do. There are many cases where we'll have internal conversations with city administration and say, hey, but we should do this. And we bring that opportunity to you where we then, the city you would have the potential to kick in additional money to allow the developer to do that additional work.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I think I was really asking, a lot of us were asking for, this is going to be great. Because sometimes I think it got to where we were anecdotally talking about traffic how bad it was in one road versus another road, and oh, it really needs it over here. Oh, well, we need it over here. And residents, would say, well, the traffic is terrible here, and it's unsafe, and a lot of subjective kind of. And so this hopefully will be able to give us some, and all those anecdotes are true in the eyes of the person who is sharing those. But we've got $500 million worth of funds to distribute. We need to do it the most effectively and objectively. And so I like that. The only thing I would say is that the economic, a couple of these are more subjective than others. And I think, I guess that's where the little, whatever you call it, we're ranking. What is that we do when we pick the pairwise? So maybe that is helpful. I suggest that we do that. But some of those things in economic, what you don't want is, I would like to do that, and let's go from there. The second thing is that kind of things happen over, you see the length of time that our capital projects take to get done, and I think some of these things are going to change on a pretty regular basis as well, specifically the traffic data, and that could change some things. So I don't have a solution for how we handle that. I think that needs to be thought through, though, because, when we take it in a point in time and we look at the data and it scores X, every year or two, maybe you do this every couple of years and it's updated, and maybe that moves the priority of a project above another one because, the traffic has really gotten bad over here, and it wasn't like that 2 years ago, but now it is. And so I know that kind of, again, I don't know how that mechanically is going to work, but I do think it needs to be thought about because it's a 10-year capital plan, and and situations are going to change, and we need to be able to make those adjustments early on. I think at a certain point you can't kind of change things up, like you're down the road on something, and that's the timeline we're doing it. But I do think through that too, as well as this further develops.
Alderman Barnhill. Who's who? Alderman Barnhill.
You mentioned Backcatcher Southwest, and I'm sitting there thinking, how would you move that up using this?
It would be difficult because some of these categories you can't exactly score, and it would get a 0 on it. So the way it would move up is, honestly, I think you would need to try to get it to move up on the regional transportation plan. You would need to get Columbia Avenue completely done. We would need to get Downs Boulevard fully widened and show major congestion there before TDOT ever even thinks about Southwest or a major economic development project that pushed it forward.
Yeah, it's really hard to put Mac Hatcher Southwest through this because it's a state-driven project. These are our local projects that are competing.
And that's basically what I'm getting to is how would this board, if we consider that project to be a major project, how would we move that? Because I'll be honest with you, I consider Backcatcher Southwest to be one of the 2 or 3 top projects, and we've discussed Columbia Avenue not being done, and we've discussed several others, but I was just sitting here trying to think about what we need to do to get that portion of Backcatcher completed.
$150 million.
Well, that's a starting. I think higher.
You think higher?
Oh, yeah,
that's fine.
absolutely.
Then that answers it. The mayor has been gracious enough to answer a question. I appreciate that. $150 million. If that's what it takes, that's what we need. That's what I need to look at then.
Way more.
Okay?
So, I mean, it's just like the effort we've had to make to get Southeast expanded.
Right.
You've got to step up and show that you're willing to bring something to the table. It's far more expensive to build a brand new road where none exists than widening one where we largely own the right of way. So I with all due respect to the mayor, that number is low.
I just made that one up.
Yeah, seriously. When you're talking about building that completely out into the future, it's a big number. Yeah. So that's what it would take, and we continue to do what Paul talked about too. It is on the regional list. We continue to talk about its impact. They look at other things in the network as well. So continue to work through other projects actually help us move along with the consideration of that project as well. Because they're going to say, improve what you have before you build new. And is that functioning? Is that still answering the need?
Yeah. You mentioned dams. What does the state have to do with dams?
It's not a state route, so it's a local road,
That's
but we
correct.
use it as a truck route.
Right.
It's used as a truck route, and it's kind of the bypass that people will take until Southwest is one day constructed.
I would like to see some of our current projects using this pairwise and see what it does. But one of my thoughts is this is not a black and white. It's always going to have gray areas in there. And I don't want our citizens or our board to think that just because it got 2 stars, it's not really, really important. Maybe there are things that we look at that aren't tangible in it. So I don't want us to just say, this is it. It's still just one tool that we have in our toolbox to make decisions. So I know Max has got a presentation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mayor, let me, as Max is coming up, let me just add, I think that's a great point. One of the things, and we may have sort of lost that in going through the detail here, when we had this discussion a year ago, one of the things we talked about is how this could help us maybe narrow the field and then dig in on more data. You know, you might apply a broader evaluation and then narrow your list of 50 down to 10 or 5 that we really dig in and get even more data and really help you differentiate it. So there's maybe a triage element to this as well that you can look at in a way of thinking about it. So thank you for that point.
Max?
Excellent. Good evening. Let's see here. How do I get to the website? There we go. Really excited to show you this draft website today. It is a development that came out of the parking study. So this is actually the same software platform that's used for the parking study outreach. We had the ability to do a second pilot of it and thought sidewalk gaps would be a great trial for that. Currently, it's in draft mode. We can share this hidden link with the board members and have you provide comments back on what you like, what you might want to see changed. But quickly, what it is, really easy way to describe to folks what a sidewalk gap is. Do we have the funding? What enabled the sidewalk gap program to occur? The resolution that was passed earlier this year. How do we decide how it gets funding? So the internal process that we use as staff to look at which sidewalk gaps would receive funding over other ones. Eventually, we'll get to a similar process to what Paula described. Something more systematic, a little bit more transparent than just, me kind of sticking my finger up in the air and guessing. I think this actually speaks to a lot of the discussion that we talked about earlier, but can we view a map of existing sidewalks? When I came on board a year ago, I could not find a place to find where all the sidewalks and trails were. So we've been working with a subcommittee and have a draft map available of all of the sidewalks, multi-use paths. Shauna, what else do we call them? Urban sidewalks, multi-trails that are within parks, all of the various names that exist out there, and put them all into one map with parks. Doesn't matter if it's a city park, doesn't matter if it's a county park. Try to get all the assets that people are walking and biking on, private, public, across the city. Also have been working with surrounding communities, so working with City of Brentwood, Nolensville, Thompson Station to see how our network interacts with others. Really the hope is for people to use this in coordination with a list of what has already been completed recently that may not be updated on the map yet, and a interactivity part where you can place onto a map where a gap exists that you're aware of that you want for us to look at. This could be a sidewalk gap project or one that's relatively low dollars, easy to do, no right-of-way acquisition, or it could be one that's very large, like the one that will be talked about at the Bowman meeting later tonight, or whether it needs to go on the list of CIP projects for the future. But this would be, something really easy. If there's a sidewalk gap, say off of Natchez Street, you can click on it, submit your idea. You have the ability to go in, give it a title, description, upload pictures. I won't actually go through the process of doing this. And ultimately, others can interact with it, so you can like what other people have already put in there. And the more likes that you would get, that would probably be a criteria that we would want to include for boosting your opportunity to be funded. And then you can sort by list and easily see what's important. Happy to take any questions.
Alderman Brown.
First of all, trail map, awesome. I appreciate the spirit of the gap. This is public facing?
Not right now.
I mean, it's intended to be.
Intended to be.
Okay. Serious agenda right now. I cannot even tell you how many requests as a ward alderman I get for sidewalk gaps. Unless we have some incredible budget coming that I don't know about, I spend a lot of time setting expectations about sidewalk gaps. Great if we want to collect them all, but managing the expectations that, I'm telling you, they're everywhere. They are literally everywhere. And we can't do them. I get them all the time. I know you get them all the time. So great if we want to collect them, but I could give you 100, I could probably give you 50 of them right now in my own ward that are going to come in here tomorrow, and we can't do them, or else I'd be giving them to you. I'd literally be if you're ready to have them, I can give them to you right now. You don't even need this website. I can literally give them to you right now.
Yes.
And so I guess I'm just not really sure. I don't know how you're going to set expectations here. I don't know why we're going to collect them. If we're ready to do it, amen. Sign me up.
So as far as the expectations go, it would be a little over $1 million. So that does not go very far. So
No.
that is the expectation, is you do not have a lot of linear miles. And we can describe in here how many linear miles we would expect to be able to do in a year, or with the total budget that we have.
There's
And
going
it's
to be a
not
cage match right here. Just the four of us, just cage matching over the. And I'm being dead serious. I love the open it up and the transparency, but I'm just telling you, this is one of the number one community to. Just getting from my neighborhood to the trail system, just getting from, I just had one last week trying to get from Monticello over to the trail. They are a weekly ask to get to sidewalks. And I just have to set the expectations every time I talk to them. There's only so much funds per quadrant. There's only so much money to be able to do it. We got to try to get easements given to us by HOAs. That reduces the cost. You don't understand the expectations to try to set to do this. This makes me, I'm going to get a ton of calls on. I'm telling you, this is a big deal. It's not a small thing that you're proposing to open up. You're going to get a ton of them, and you're just not going to be able to do them. That's all I'm going to say. I applaud it. I think it's great, but you're opening the door for something you're not going to be able to deliver. You're just not.
Alderman Berger, you're recognized, and we need to move on.
Yeah, not even close. We couldn't, it's going to be a nightmare. So honestly, I think to keep it internal is better, and let our constituents talk to us, because when we talk to them, then we can evaluate and say, internally we're going to say, oh, well, we know a project that's coming up, or this is happening. Maybe we can get that done when this project happens. So we have a lot of knowledge because of the job that we do. And I think we would be more helpful to the constituents than having them weigh in on this, because we're going to get just, rained on with it. And we're not going to be able to handle it with $1 million, So I'd like to keep it internal, at least this year, and then we can evaluate it again. But I think we'll have enough to do right here.
Quick comment, Vice Mayor.
Is this going to be a one-time thing or an open all the time? Is this a continuously open thing, or is this a push like the parking study, get an inventory of gaps, shut down so that we have something to start working from? I could see.
The intent would be that it would be continuously
Continuous.
open, and we would be working on it. But also, to your point, to provide a feedback, there's going to be a project on this roadway. It'll be addressed if a capital project is implemented. right-of-way and utilities are a significant issue. Until those are addressed, we can't move forward. So it does provide that place for you to go. But I do hear you totally that the overwhelmingness of it might.
How do you
might become an
track?
issue.
How do you keep up with the gaps that we have now? We don't have way.
We do. Spreadsheet. We have a
list.
spreadsheet, and I entered them into this application.
And so I think there's some value in capturing from the public the gaps that they see that we don't see, that they don't take the time to pick up the phone and call. So a push to gather some information in a window of time, I think would be very helpful. And maybe you do that once a year. I do think leaving it open and then not having, I think it may not be as effective if it's just left open all year long, because I don't know that it'll get the traffic necessarily that would be valuable, create value. But a shorter window, I would say, do a short push like we did the parking study. Maybe we do a push every year. We used to do this like every Franklin Tomorrow did. So that would be my feedback. Thanks.
We need to
Yes,
move
sir.
on. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go to item 6, is TDOT Harpeth River Bridge update.
So Paul had the opportunity to meet with TDOT leadership late last week. I was patched in on a call related to it as well. As you may know, the bid for the Harpeth River Bridge was opened by TDOT about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, something like that. And we were approached about looking at the design that was there. I do want to remind everybody that the design that is in place was done in 2019, was done with input from the Historic Zoning Commission, and the city put additional dollars in place to help support some of the upgrades to make the bridge more attractive overall and to fit some of the streetscape elements, et cetera. So that's where we are. That process had been employed at that time to help influence this design. It is the design TDOT worked from. We know there may be some desire to revisit some elements, and so we got a sense from TDOT at the end of last week of how far they'd be willing to go. It's not a full blown redesign, that's for sure. There's some very limited components that they would put on the table, but we'd certainly be willing to have that discussion if the board would like us to. Would suggest that if you want to revisit some things, we follow the same path we did before, which is to get feedback from the whole of the Historic Zoning Commission and the design review group there, and then bring that to you for any guidance that you would like to explore there. Paul can walk through more details. He had more detailed discussions than I did, but they do have a good bidder, had a very competitive process. TDOT is anxious to move forward. They are also concerned about redesign that comes with going too far on adjusting elements and or the fairness of the bid process if the project changes too much that they might need to reject bids and go back out. So those are the primary concerns that drive their sort of limited view of how far we should go in revisiting things, but there is at least some willingness to do that, and I'll let Paul kind of talk a little more about those elements, and then we'd welcome your guidance on if you'd like us to explore that. They do want to award the bid by the end of the month if possible. So we still could work with them on those defined elements past that time, but I think they want to get a sense from us how far we're interested in going, if we're revisiting the project more fully, or if we can work within the parameters they've given us to still allow the award of a bid. So Paul.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Eric did a great job explaining this. The exhibit you're looking at right now is what was provided by our streetscape consultant, CT Consultants, and was ultimately what we used to guide the design process, gave to TDOT and their consultants. It's what we presented to the design review committee, and it's what we based our estimates on to fund the enhancements associated with the project.
The city did fund about $900,000 roughly of dollars for enhancements on the project.
Yeah,
You've already made that commitment for the design that was bid.
The $900,000 plus dollars really goes to the additional pedestrian separator that you see here on the screen. It goes to the streetscape style lights that are to be painted Franklin green, which look very much black, and with the railing system that you see there. Now, talking with TDOT after the public meeting, we had a few residents that voiced concern over the design. And so we did go down and meet with TDOT and ask what they were willing to revisit and not revisit. And because they had such a good competitive bid, and it's been through a very public process of where we shared it and provided feedback. I know it was 2019. They didn't feel it was appropriate to make major modifications at this point in the bid process. So if we can stick with minor changes and everybody's happy with that, they can proceed forward. Major changes would require a rebid, which would take about 8 months to a year is what I would tell you. So what is the bridge ultimately going to look like? It's not going to look like what you're seeing. It'll look close to this, but not exactly what you're looking at. This is the best example I could give is this is a Carruthers Parkway Bridge. It's got a form line finish. It's got a cap rail on it, and it's got a street light. Again, we're going to do a decorative street light. We're using a different style form liner. What came out from our streetscape consultant was to try to match more of the Bethurem wall as you come into down on Franklin Road, a form liner that mimics that more. This
And that
wall
could include color too, correct, Paul?
Correct. That could include color as well. The color wasn't actually included in the bid, but it can easily be added. It's a very minor change and a very minor cost. This rail system you're seeing here has no color. It just has a texture coating and an anti-graffiti coating on it. That's all it has. And it does include the columns with the pedestrian rail so you can see over the river. So this is the design plans. I'm going to actually jump over these. This is the form liner that was selected, and again, we worked with our planning department to make that final selection and base it on the concept that our streetscape consultant had put together. This I was able to get off their website. This is the form liner that was proposed. These walls, again, do not have any color, but color can be added to make it look really good. It's essentially, it's a penetrating stain that they put on it. The life expectancy is anywhere from 15 to 25 years. It can also be reapplied. This example here, again, I pulled it from the manufacturer's website, shows a wall in the process of being stained. On the top one, the bottom one shows a complete product of where it is stained. The one thing that TDOT said, TDOT initially didn't even want to use a form liner. They were 100% against using a form liner because it's up against the roadway. It's not crash tested. It took some convincing. It's only a 30-mile-an-hour road. Ultimately, they did allow us to use a form liner, so stone veneer against the roadway is totally out of the question. They would never allow that up against the roadway. And so the questions we had with them was, well, can we remove the pedestrian separator? Is that even an option? And I was just attempting to get as many options as possible to give y'all. And they said removing the pedestrian separator at this point, they would prefer to go back and redesign. They would not feel comfortable awarding a bid with that type of major change. And if you removed it, you'd have to push it to that outside rail. And so those all were major changes to them. So the changes ultimately they're open to is the railing. We could revisit the railing. We can enhance that to some degree. We could use a staining to try to give it to make it look more like a real stone finish. They were totally open to that. But outside of that, they were not interested in any major changes without rejecting the project, rebidding it competitively, which not only delays this project, it would delay the 96 bridge as well, because their intention is to finish this job and then immediately go into the 96 bridge. So with that said, I want to open up for feedback, questions.
We did include in the packet a letter we received yesterday that sort of summarizes the TDOT position or approach on this. So you have that. One other element too is if you'd like, we can do some additional work on the second bridge. If you'd like, there might be some opportunity to influence that some more as well, if you want to give that direction along with how you want to approach this.
I do have two speakers. Would you like to hear from them before y'all say something? Okay, I'll call up Joy Morris and Mary Pierce. You have 2 minutes each.
Hi, I'm Joy Morris. I live on 3rd Avenue South, so this is my neighborhood. I think we need to rethink this pedestrian barrier completely. It doesn't need to be there. It's 30 miles an hour. The traffic rarely ever goes 30 miles an hour. There's never been a pedestrian barrier there. It looks like with the one on MacHatcher, you're walking down a corridor, a tunnel. That's not what downtown historic Franklin looks like. And I think we need to keep that in mind. This is the entrance to historic Franklin. It needs to look like historic Franklin. Put back the rail that's there now, the same design. That would be fine. I've been driving around Belmead. They have stone walls with a limestone cap. That's it, just a simple stone wall. The fake concrete is not appropriate. Put real stone or real brick, but not artificial. The residents of downtown Franklin are not allowed to put plastic fences in their yards. I don't think the city of Franklin should be allowed to put fake rails on their bridges. This is something that they're saying they would have to rebid. I don't understand that. To take a wall out, there's no rebidding needed for that. The rail will be the last thing that goes up on this new bridge. You got plenty of time to say, just don't put that part. And if you put that wall, where's it going to end? Is it going to go down Main Street in front of the shops? It just seems to me to be unneeded, and it doesn't look right. And what you're showing in these pictures,
Your time's
I'm
up,
sorry,
please.
is really ugly. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you coming, Miss Pierce? Come on up, Mary.
I'm Mary Pierce, and I live at 103 Woodview Court, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I did a lot of the private sector fundraising for Streetscape, so I care a lot. It keeps being said that this came to historic zoning. It came to a design review meeting 7 years ago where we do not take minutes. I would also say that the beautiful rendering is very misleading. I appreciate that Mr. Holson showed some pictures tonight that actually looks like the fake stone, so you can see, and when you try to color it, it honestly almost gets worse. I understand that you need a solid buffer, and I would ask that the opportunity be left open to move your wall of strength to the riverside and your wrought iron to the traffic side so that it has a historic configuration. We would not, this would not be in our guidelines to use this type of material in the historic districts in Franklin. You do not have to comply with that. It's not legally required. You have always done that. And the last thing I want to do is see this project slowed down. I understand that. But I hope there is some way that the city can work out something with TDOT, who works at the pleasure of the citizens of Tennessee, to find a way to make some changes to make this bridge that could be an incredible enhancement to our award-winning downtown worthy of being there. I look at the bridge, and am I so happy MacHatcher got extended to West Haven? I'm thrilled. But I drive across that bridge, and it in no way enhances the character of our town and that beautiful section. And
Your time's up.
that's it. Thank you.
Okay, board. I'll open the comments. I was on the phone today and spoke briefly about it. One of the things that I've always been concerned about when this board starts revisiting projects that prior boards have approved. So, in my mind, having dealt with TDOT, having sat on the Transportation Policy Board, and the fact that we have this bridge funded, as well as the Murfreesboro Road Bridge, I don't want to do anything that would delay in any way getting this bridge finished. It's going to be a great inconvenience to our community whenever this bridge is being done, and we're working very, very hard to make sure that we keep it open to 2 lanes of traffic and pedestrians during that time. We've put a lot of extra money in this to enhance the appearance. I certainly appreciate the expertise of the 2 speakers here tonight and their comments, but I don't want to see us do anything that in any form or fashion slows this project down or gives TDOT an excuse to not do it until later. So.
Yes, I agree with you. Just what you said.
Alderman Berger.
Yeah, I really don't want to slow this down either, but look at that picture and then go back to the one that's got the people walking across the bridge. It looks totally different. What? Yeah, that looks good. I don't like the other one at all. I like that. But if we remove that wall and put up the same kind of railing that's on the riverside, what would that look like? And I'm sure that would be a lot less expensive than the wall. But here's the problem. I don't want to delay this. But this is here to stay. This isn't going anywhere. We could have 100 years, 150 years and come back, and whatever we put there is going to be there. So, although I don't want to delay it, I also really want to make sure this looks right. This is the first gateway, this is the first antebellum trail in the whole area from Nashville to Maury County. This is the gateway, it's always been the gateway into Franklin. So we better get this right. And I really don't want to delay it a year, but I don't know what we can do. And TDOT may be pulling our chain a little bit. I don't know. Say, oh, well, we can't, we have to go back out the bid. We have to do all these other things. I'm not sure that any of the changes that we make would be major, but taking out the wall and putting in another rail that matches that rail, I don't know if that would be major, but it would be a lot less cost. And I don't know.
I don't think we know that.
I think maybe we ought to try working with them again to see if we can get somewhere. I just, I do know, Paul, when you said you could do the design, you could do the color. Can you also color the capstone as well?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I like that idea and everything. I'm a little worried here. Because we're not doing this for a 10-year, a 20-year, a 30-year project. We're doing this for a 100-year project, 150-year project. Look around town, look what's still around, look at some of the elements in our historic city that have been here for years, hundreds of years.
I'm going to call on Alderman Potts, but one thing I failed to mention was that this will get, I think, 50 homes out of the floodplain.
Approximately 50 homes, yes, ma'am.
So,
And the one thing I do want to add is the more feedback we get, the better, because TDOT needs to know after tonight whether they're rejecting bids or whether they're moving forward.
Alderman
And
Potts.
they were pretty serious. This is not, I mean, I'm not sure we're gonna, this, they felt very strongly that ethically they had put a project out.
Sure.
And if they modify it too much, it's unfair to the bidders. So that's why they're feeling an obligation to go back with additional design and a full process again. So I think that delay, that's not an idle threat. That's very real to them in terms of the integrity of the process.
Yeah, they feel very strongly,
So-
and so do we. I think there is something to be said here.
I just want to be clear that I don't think we can push them to just do it anyway. I think their delay is very real. I don't know that we're going to be able to convince them that they can just accept the bid and then significantly modify components of the project. They felt very strongly about that. And because we pushed them on that, Paul pushed them on that in particular. So I just want to give a little more, I guess, color to that discussion.
Go back and tell me how the meeting and push them a little bit more.
Go ahead, Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. I have a couple of comments, but I have a follow-up on what Eric was just sharing. If we go back and we do not move forward now and we ask them to rebid this, what's the timeline for that? And we're not guaranteed our recommendations, are we?
I think they would work with us. I think you're looking at least a year, and you're probably looking at additional cost. We've already put $900,000 into it. I think you're very possibly looking at.
The design costs, working.
That's going to be on our dime.
Working through historic zoning, potentially right-of-way is one thing they reference in their letter. Working through historic zoning, board of mayor and aldermen, back to them, and then going through a bidding process is going to end up being a year.
A year to year and a half.
Easily a year.
Easily a year. So, and I don't know if this is major or minor, but this is kind of the question. Is you've got this image here on the screen. I look at several of our gateway intersections. Is it possible to incorporate the 12-inch city seal on each end of the brick columns as you are coming onto the bridge?
Yes, they said doing like an inset for a seal is not a problem. That's minor formwork changes. They would absolutely accommodate those.
So you could do those. Could you also do those on the columns or something similar?
Something similar, yes.
Okay. And then, if I heard you correctly, well, actually, let me go back to this. Is the steel that you're seeing, the pedestrian outer side there, that's a heavy gauge steel, black coated or Franklin green coated, but it's heavy gauge. We're not talking aluminum or anything like that.
No, it's heavy gauge, but it's not crash worthy.
Not crash worthy.
So if you have to have a crash worthy wall in between the Harpeth River and the roadway, no matter what you do.
Okay. And
Alderman Vice
then
Mayor Baggett.
The last thing I wanted to ask is, did I hear correctly that we cannot do any type of exterior, we'll call it stonework on that wall right there to match our gateway fencing or gateway? Well, sure, gateway fence.
So up against the roadway, you cannot do any type of stone to match it. You could do it on the other side. However, TDOT is looking at that as a major design change that they're not willing to accommodate without a rebid. That's what's been said today.
And you can't do that because on the automobile side of it, because once it gets crashed, you're going to have to continue to repair that. Is that their logic?
It's a maintenance concern, but it's not crash tested is what they've said to me.
All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
So we don't get, this is not, really our decision. This is what it feels like. I mean, to a large degree, we don't design the bridge to its full extent. Or if we did, it was done 7-8 years ago. It was brought through historic zoning design review, which maybe we should, a lot of lessons we could learn here. And like you said, on the next bridge, I think we're going to, hit it out of the ballpark on that. And there's probably more traffic that comes down 96 than this. So that's a good thing. If you'll go to the next page, the next one, that one. Can you zoom in? The top is the most, but the part of the problem is we don't have a good image of really, that's the closest image to what that wall is going to, the top one. Mm-hmm. That's the form that's already in there. And if you can't zoom in where you are and seeing there. This artist rendering, if you look at the artist rendering and you look at that, it looks very different. But this is the form. And I think that has thrown thrown me off. So that's what's there now. I've also spent some time researching various other forms out there because there are a lot of these companies out there that do this. They're specialty contractors. The ones that you see on Matt Catcher, the ones that you see on Carruthers, they're terrible. They're wonderful for right where they are. but not great for downtown Franklin. I would agree with the public speakers. They're not. That just doesn't fit. So we know if the public is thinking we're going to get that in downtown, the answer is no. We're not going to get what you see on Mac Hatcher and what you see on Carruthers. That's not what's happening in downtown Franklin. It's just not. It's not the same forms. It's not the same. And so I think there's a better form. TDOT will let us change these forms.
Yes.
And that piece could go back through historic.
Yes.
And historic zoning could have the say on the coat or like any type of finish, any type of, if we change the mold, if we go out and find some specialty contractors that have a really, I'm just trying to find a way for us not to delay the bid, but have a good outcome that looks better than what we have if we, that's what we got to figure out. Because I don't think there's any appetite to delay the bid. I mean, that's what I've heard. That would be a slap in the face. TDOT, that would be, in a lot of ways, just not great. So I think if we could send this back to historic to figure out what that form is, I'm in favor of the pedestrian walkway because, for a lot of reasons, they will let us change the railing. They will let us do a more decorative railing.
Yes.
So it won't look like the one on Matt Catcher and it won't look like the one on Carruthers.
Correct.
So maybe there's some latitude there we can have in how that's decorative and how that looks, possibly. I mean,
Yes.
they're going to give you, and they don't have to rebid to do that.
They do not have to rebid to do that.
At this point, I'm with the mayor. It's not good to go back and change. It's not good back to, I think Sam Whitson got this into the wheel or the Improve Act. This is one of the, people have been working on this for a long time. If this all goes back through historic, any of these changes, and they get to make those decisions, then I would be in favor of that.
What they could do is bring you recommendations,
Right,
and
right.
then you all can do that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the forms. There's lots of options. We can work on that.
We have time for that.
Yeah. There's time. They indicated they'd be, if they know kind of the scope, they'll go ahead and award the bid by the end of the month. That's kind of their time frame, and then they'll work with us for a period of time after that to get these elements updated, modified, and however we can work within the limitations they've given us.
So there's no way, even if we delayed the bid, that this could be stone. Is
No.
I want that to also. If we delayed the bid, that we couldn't get stone, have a beautiful stone bridge. Is that
It would be a different cost, but you could potentially put stone not on the driver's side.
You'd have
not
to
on
go
the driver's side?
Yeah, you might be able to go. Yeah, between the rails, right?
Between the
that
rails.
railing areas.
So
you might be able to
we
do
would
that.
delay, and it would be more than 900,000 for the people walking on the sidewalk to see the stone.
Yes.
But no one driving on the road would be able to see the actual natural stone. Is that what we know that you can't.
Correct, it's on the other side.
Yeah, be on the other side.
So again, I'm
The
looking.
riverside.
I would love to have a stone bridge, but if you're going to be, if there's no way we can put stone on the drive aisle side, in either way, then I think we're kind of barking up the wrong tree on that. Like, we're not going to get stone that we can look at.
Correct.
From the street, just from the sidewalks. So I think we got to work. I love a good looking bridge, but I think we're stuck in a lot of ways.
And
Alderman Caesar, you're recognized. Then I'll get Alderman Barnhill.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to kind of recount this, because a lot of comments have been made about what it is and what it isn't. The biggest problem I think I have is that slide number 1 is what we bought, and slide number everything else is what we're getting. And for at least 4 of us sitting on this board, we candidly, up until a couple weeks ago, I didn't know that we weren't getting number 1. And so from a process perspective, it would have been fantastic, and we should provide this feedback to TDOT. We appreciate their investment in our community and coming down and having the conversation about the transition and how to manage that, because that will occupy a lot of our near-term frustrations. And I'm glad that they came in and discussed that. It's somewhat inconvenient that we didn't know that what we bought isn't actually what they wanted to put forward. So I'm glad that the public process has unearthed the Mac Hatcher stone or the Carruthers Parkway stone before it gets installed. So good job for us kind of having that conversation up front.
I was just going to say, TDOT really did believe they had full buy-in. this has been a total shock to them.
And I hope if TDOT's watching tonight, they're not seeing us as ungrateful, because I'm thankful that this bridge is going in, and I think it's the overwhelming opinion of this board that we not delay this. I also think this board recognizes this is not going to be a 25-year bridge. It's going to be potentially a century bridge. And as one of the primary gateways, and I would disagree a little bit with Alderman Baggett on the number of individuals that use this bridge, perhaps cars, 96, you're certainly right. But people walking across this bridge far outweighs the number of folks that probably walk across the bridge if they're going to, unless there's an event at your house, Patrick, and then everybody's using it. But I think for that reason, the city and members of this community were disappointed that the railing that's in this picture is different than the railing that we see on slide number 2. Can you scroll to slide number 2? And so what I think we need to decide, because it sounds to me like we're at an impasse. We can't remove the separator, because if we put it on the riverside, then that's a rebid, correct?
Correct.
So, but we can adjust the facing of that separator without deferring or delaying the process.
Correct.
Yeah. And apparently this historic meeting in the past said that slide number 1 was okay. They probably didn't see slide number 2. And so I think it makes a lot of sense, because that railing looks like the railing that my neighbor has that keeps their dog in. And it doesn't, to me, it's perfect to keep my neighbor's dog in. It's a far cry from this, even if it's painted Franklin green. And so I think what we need to do, just to maybe consolidate my comments, we need to go back with a couple of options that look a little bit more like, from a railing perspective, this. And we need to understand what are the real limitations on what we can put on that pedestrian automobile separator. We need to put it a few options, not 100, because what I don't want is the design review committee to go back and think that they have carte blanche authority to redesign the whole thing, because they don't. Because I think this board has said we don't want to delay this. We want to make nuanced modifications to make this reflect the aesthetic of downtown Franklin. The other thing I would say is, and this is my final comments, I'm wrapping up. 7 years ago, when this bridge was passed, this picture perhaps, Franklin was a different place, and it was a different place for a number of reasons. Harpeth Hotel was not there. It was not completed, not open yet. Factory was not what it was. And the number of people walking between downtown Franklin and the factory was certainly less. And so as we think about the next 100 years, I don't believe that those pedestrian pathways between downtown Franklin and the factory are going to become less utilized. I think they're going to become more. And we need to be intentional about carrying the look of Franklin into that next corridor. So thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Barnhill.
I'm gonna make mine a little briefer than some of the others. I certainly don't want to see us delay the project, and I don't want to see the TDOT put in a position of having to rebid. I really don't think that reflects favorably on us as a body in and of itself, regardless of what we think should be done. But I think if there are some areas where we can look at and maybe make some improvements without jeopardizing the project, I think we should take a look at those. And especially if there's areas where we can look at after the project is bid, if they're going to bid at the end of the month, then that should be what we would be looking forward to. And I have no doubt. I think that if there's areas there that the state can work with us, I think they would be more than willing to do that. I can understand. I can understand sitting up here and hearing what I hear. Many times it's frustrating to think that you've got this problem resolved and something else pops up. But I would go ahead, Eric, and make sure that we, from my perspective, I do not want to delay the project.
Mayor, one question.
Go ahead, Alderman Brown.
Did you say the reason that we can't remove the wall is because 30-mile-an-hour speed limit?
It's more of a TDOT requirement. If it was a city road and this was a city bid, it'd be very different. We could stone veneer it, we could remove the wall. I don't even necessarily think you need an outside crash-worthy wall on a
I thought it
local
was speed
city
limit
street.
driven, and I thought
No, this has to do
25
with
miles an hour sounds great to me on that road. but- okay.
TDOT policy.
Then I think the compromises of putting stuff through historic zoning and doing the best we can, I agree. We can't delay this, but let's let historic zoning have a crack at this.
We will do it.
So what you're saying is that then, that's not a deal. I mean, you can't do that. Yeah, don't let,
All right, we have,
Anyway,
we only have 16 items left.
One other question. If that railing on that side, right there on that slide, if we can't achieve something like that, then we have to put up the one on the next slide. Is that a possibility that we can't achieve that?
We will look at the options they
Okay.
allow us to use in railing
Okay.
and we'll consult
All right.
with historic zoning.
I'm just going on record
Let's
right
not
now.
prejudge what the
Okay.
railing options are.
And,
We don't know.
and I get all this, and I'm on board with everybody, I don't want to delay it, but if I'm looking at that plain railing, this is here for a century, and if we can't achieve that and change that railing and stuff, I'm a dead no.
The outside railing you can achieve, period.
I'm
You
just
can
gonna,
achieve that.
I'm just gonna be a no.
We should be able to do that.
Because we cannot put that second thing downtown. It just doesn't belong.
Yeah, the outside railing we can achieve.
Okay, we're gonna go to item number 7, 8, 9, and 10 together, if we could. Joey? This is Resolution 2026-48, a resolution adopting a plan of services for annexation of property located north of Clovercroft Road, east of Oxford Glen Drive by the city of Franklin. Established a public hearing August the 11th, and the item 8 is annexation of the 5 properties. Number 9 is the zoning, and number 10 is the development plan. Go ahead.
Thank you. Let's see. I'll go ahead and start while that's thinking. The properties being considered are contiguous to the city limits and within the eastern portion of the Franklin urban growth boundary in the Watson Branch Drainage Basin, and has been identified as a short-term capability area within our annexation analysis. The plan of services details no major concerns in providing infrastructure and services to the property. The Poplar Reserves PUD subdivision is a proposal of 41 single-family lots for a site composed of 22.78 acres with a density of 1.8 units per acre. As detailed in the associated rezoning staff report, and the ordinance, Envision Franklin places these parcels within a mixed residential design concept, which supports the developments overall. The proposed development meets the parking requirements within the zoning ordinance, and the traffic impact analysis has been submitted and reviewed. There are 3 modification of standards requests with this plan, and let me well, that confused it. So they're all related to streets and circulation. So let's see if I can get one. Okay, we'll go with that for now. So the first MOS is to remove remove the requirement to provide a street stub to the eastern property line. So if you follow my mouse here, that's the entire eastern property line over here, so no connection to the east. Staff is recommending disapproval of MOS number 1. Planning Commission did recommend approval by a vote of 5-3. MOS number 2 is a request to align the connection to the adjacent western property to the northern property line via a right-of-way extension from the proposed cul-de-sac, rather than in a manner that would extend Den Hart Drive in the neighboring what's the Navarro? Navarro, thank you. The adjacent Navarro development. So if you'll follow my cursor again, yes, that's not built yet. So that would be, they're requesting to, instead of extend or have a stub here that would eventually extend to this here, they have the connection on the northern part of the site up here. So MOS number 3 is a request to provide a cul-de-sac rather than a full western connection to Albrecht Drive, again with that Navarro subdivision. Again, if you follow my pointer, it's here. The zoning ordinance would require a full connection across they are proposing a cul-de-sac. So for that MOS number 2, down here, staff is recommending disapproval. Planning Commission recommended approval of a vote of 6-2. And for the cul-de-sac here, rather than the full connection, for MOS number 3, staff is recommending disapproval. Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 8-1. So the Planning Commission, by a vote of 8-0, along with staff recommendations, are recommending approval with conditions for the development plan and approval overall for all 4 of those items. So happy to answer any questions.
We do have the applicant here tonight also, but we'll give him a chance to speak on items 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Thank you, Mayor and Alderman. My name is Greg Gamble, and I'm a landscape architect with Kimley Horn. Tonight representing Poplars Reserve, development proposal by Landmark Investments. And want to talk through what we're proposing tonight. And Mayor, I have a brief presentation to give. At the Planning Commission, we had a very difficult time with the download of the presentation, so I've provided it to you in an 8.5 by 11 format. And I can just flip through it real fast, take me just a second, and then I have my list of sidewalk gaps that I'd like to conclude with. On the first page here, this is Envision Franklin policy of mixed residential. Mixed residential policy, you're allowed to do single-family homes, duplexes, multiplexes, and townhomes. But given the context of McKay's Mill, Navarro, and the other subdivisions that are around it, single-family really feels to be the most appropriate from a land use standpoint. On the next page, then, we have, thank you, you jumped right there. The next page here, we are showing the 5 properties that make up the land area that would be included in this PUD. What's interesting in this map is you see that only one of the properties out of the 5 has road frontage. So to think about how this might develop outside of the context of a master plan PUD would be very, very complicated. This is an opportunity in front of you tonight that I really think that the Planning Commission recognized as well, is that we can really kind of resolve a holistic master plan for this area and kind of solve for some of these lots that don't have road frontage, that don't have connectivity back out to our public infrastructure. We'll like to point out that the DeBear property is in the middle of this. We've labeled that for you so you can see that. They do plan on maintaining the ownership of land there. They do plan on having 3 of the 41 lots that they retain ownership of. The next page then, we have the kind of context map of this area. And we know that within the next few years, McEwen Drive, City of Franklin project will be completed. We know that by October, Market Street, which is being privately constructed by the developer of Poplars Farms, thank you, using recapture to build that road would be completed somewhere around October. So these are 2 major infrastructure projects that are coming forward. We know that the proposed development of Poplars Reserve would not likely have its first resident move in till about 2028. So the timing of these are very good. And I know that we will hear over the course of your review of this proposal that there's straining on our roadway infrastructure in this area. And so I brought you a few facts tonight that I think will be enlightening. We looked up the number of homes that are approved from College Grove and Triune to the city limits along the Highway 96 corridor. There are currently 725 lots that are approved on a preliminary plat. There are currently 158 lots that are approved by plat. So they plat once the infrastructure has been constructed, but it doesn't mean the house is built yet. The preliminary plat just means they can move forward with site construction documents. There are 174 lots in the county that are currently in the planning process. They've been submitted and are cycling through. That is a total of 1,057 lots in the county between College Grove, Triune, and the city limits of the city of Franklin. So if you were to take 1,057 lots and apply the City of Franklin's arterial road impact fees and our collector road impact fees from July 1st of 2026 to that, that would have been $10.5 million in revenue in those arterial road and collector road impact fees. And want to point out that when we talk about development in Franklin, developers pay for development. And so Alderman Berger said, you know, when we first met with her, there is some strained infrastructure in this area and we want to get our hands around it. So my client, who's only proposing 41 homes, who does not have a requirement to do a traffic study, paid for a traffic study. You're not required to pay for a traffic study until you have over 100 homes in the city of Franklin. And one of the very first things that our traffic engineer discovered was that the intersection of Oxford Glen and Clovercroft is failing in the evening. It has a level of service C in the morning and is failing in the evening. And we met with David Chang, we met with Paul Holson, and reviewed those findings with them with some modification of signal timing and the roadway improvements being proposed by Navarro and the roadway improvements that are being proposed by Poplar's Reserve. Changes the intersection to a level of service B in the morning and C in the evening. So that's not a heavy lift. That's not a big expense, but we can make that improvement. We have also discovered an improvement of Oxford Glen and Liberty Pike, and those findings will greatly improve that roundabout. We're going to be bringing those findings to the CIP. I don't have those for you tonight. I want to start with the CIP and go through the right process. So we'll be bringing you that information. On the next page then, Joey, this is a proposal of 41 homes.
Let me
3 of
stop
those
you
lots
right
will...
there. I don't intend for you to hog the entire next 30 minutes on this presentation.
I will
So
skip to the end.
Go ahead and make your points if you would, because we have other things to look at.
Very good. If you'll go 2 slides. Okay, go back one. This slide showed the Planning Commission that we were dedicating the full right-of-way with a 5-lane road section, the full right-of-way to the city of Franklin. Okay, if you'll go to the next section, keep going. So this shows where the hillside overlay is on a neighboring property. You cannot build roads in the city of Franklin over 10% slope. The gold shows 14% slope. We would have to connect back to Poplar Farms entrance there, and they're all 14 and 25% slopes. That's why we're asking for the MOS. The next slide, keep going. Let's go one more. Okay, so this shows the property where we're asking for the MOS. The other 2 MOSs, the cul-de-sac and the connection to the road. There are 2 houses on this property and a pond that is a waters of the state. There's a home to the north, right just south of the cul-de-sac. There's another home right where we would be connecting the Navarre Street through to our street. So out of respect to our neighbors, we're asking that they have the ability just to protect their house. Those MOSs would relieve the obligation of the right-of-way connections. Mayor, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Happy to answer any
Alderman
questions.
Brown.
2 questions. What are the road improvements required before first occupancy? And then what happens if Navarro doesn't happen, or what is the requirement of road improvement before Navarro?
Navarro has broken ground and they are under construction. So the city of Franklin, from just a one-way in, one-way out standpoint, you're allowed to construct up to 20 homes, and then you have to sprinkler the entire neighborhood for fire protection.
Alderman Caesar.
Appreciate the traffic information you shared, Greg. Was that traffic information and the improvements at Oxford Glen, were those prior to the 1,100 homes in the county that are moving forward, and are those prior to Poplar Grove coming online?
The homes I mentioned that are in the county are homes that are not yet, they haven't pulled a building permit, so they are unconstructed homes. We always include background data, and we always include an assumed growth. I'm not exactly sure what was prescribed here. Typically, it's a 3% growth over a period of multiple years.
But probably not Poplar Farms.
Yeah, it would have absolutely included Poplar Farms in the background. Yeah, okay. Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Just say that Market Street opens up at the end of the fall, by the end of the year for sure. McEwen gets done in 2028. Players Mill is open now, and school's not in session. It's greatly improved. once school gets back in, but once Players Mill's back shut, we'll have an issue, but after that, we will have that flow again. We've got a lot of infrastructure going on here. You've got, how long's that turn lane, may I ask? The additional lane that's being added to McEwen, or to being added to Clovercroft, down to McEwen, it extends beyond the development there, I believe. So I'm curious because what I think you're improving is the stacking and then the dedicated right-hand turn lane, is that correct?
Yes, it'll be a 3-lane section. This is in your packet from beyond the proposed development all the way back to the
Okay,
intersection.
great. So then they can stack, they can move, and then they have the right-hand dedicated turn that we can keep people moving.
Absolutely.
Alderman Fox.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Mr. Gamble. Could you do us a favor? Would you just repeat what your, the commitment was regarding the 5 lanes? That's for now.
The full right-of-way will be dedicated.
The full right-of-way for 5 lanes will be dedicated moving
Yes,
forward?
on this page, which might be a little bit easier to see, this shows the 3 lanes that are proposed for now.
Okay.
And it shows the existing right-of-way line, and then it shows the right-of-way line that's going to be dedicated to the city. The right-of-way line that's being dedicated to the city, that includes a full 5-lane section for some future date.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll go to, next is ordinance 2026-07, an ordinance to rezone 7.031 acres from Regional Commerce 12 District to Plan PD District 32.7 for the property located north of Goose Creek Bypass, west of Old Paytonsville Road, located at 2408 and 2412 Goose Creek Bypass. And we're also looking at the development plan for the same property with one modification of standard. Joey?
Yes, thank you. So this is a proposal for the Bassett PUD subdivision with a proposal of 230 multifamily dwelling units for a site that is composed of a little over 7 acres, making the density 32.7 units per acre. So the proposed development generally meets the intent and guiding principles of Envision Franklin, which places it in the regional commerce design concept, and there is a special consideration for this property to be entirely multifamily product. The traffic impact analysis has been submitted and reviewed. There is one modification of standards request for the foundation height, and that is to reduce the required minimum of 18 inches to have no minimum whatsoever. Staff is supportive of this MOS, as is Planning Commission. The Board of Mayor and Alderman has approved similar requests in the past. Overall, staff is recommending approval of both the ordinance or the rezoning and the development plan with conditions, as does Planning Commission. Thank you.
Questions for Joey? Okay, we'll now go to item 13, which is ordinance 2026-15, an ordinance to rezone 5.14 acres from Plan PD District to Plan PD 21.70 District for the property located east of Natchez Street and north of Acton Street at 137 Natchez Street, Denson Place, PUD. Established public hearing on August the 11th, 2026. And we'll also be looking at the development plan for the same property I just described, and also the parkland impact fee. Can you do all those?
Not the parkland, but the first 2.
Okay.
So this is a development for the Franklin Housing Authority for their Denson Place PD subdivision, replacing an existing housing development that was been there for many decades. The property is within the mixed residential design concept as described in Envision Franklin. And Envision Franklin does include a special consideration for projects that align with the Franklin Housing Authority master plan. And that has been updated to essentially match the proposal that is before you this evening. There are 4 modifications of standards requests with this plan. The first is a reduction in parking standards. So what they are proposing is to have for studio, for all bedroom types, 1.75 spaces per multifamily residential unit. Staff recommends approval of this MOS, as others have been, other requests similar to this have been approved in the past. State Planning Commission also recommends approval of this MOS. MOS number 2 is a request to modify the required natural area from 10% to 0%, with a total of 15% open space, with 5% being programmed and 10% being non-programmed. This is mainly because there's really nothing left on this property that would fit into the definition of natural area. Those are your hillsides, your fields, your kind of more river view kind of settings. This was entirely paved over when this project was developed many decades ago. So they are requesting to, instead of having the 10% natural area, increase the overall open space to 15%. So staff is recommending approval of MOS number 2, as did Planning Commission. MOSs number 3 and 4 relate to the historic buffer. If you'll follow me on the screen here, there is a church, the northern parcel, just above where the property boundary is for the project. It is potentially eligible for the National Register, so the applicant has went ahead and included a historic buffer of 75 feet into the plan. But in order to make everything fit, MOS number 3 is a request to allow stormwater infrastructure within that historic buffer. MOS number 4 is to allow utility easements within that buffer without applying additional offsetting width to that buffer. And for both 3 and 4 regarding that buffer, staff is recommending approval, as did Planning Commission. So overall, staff is recommending approval with conditions of both the development plan and the rezoning, and Planning Commission did as well unanimously.
I did mess up on items 11 and 12. I noticed that I had a speaker card for, was there anything you wanted to add to 11 and 12? Okay, great. Sorry about that. And so I do have Mr. Gamble that wants to come back for 13, 14, 15.
Thank you, Mayor and Alderman. Just want to point out, I've also provided you a packets for Iris and for Denison Place. I'm here tonight with Derwin Jackson from the Franklin Housing Authority, and they wanted to give recognition to Reverend Denny Denison, who was a very strong advocate in the city of Franklin for affordable housing. And so this particular development is named in memory of him and the work that he did in the city of Franklin for affordable housing. If you'll turn to the very last 2 pages of the 8.5 by 11 packet that I have, there were comments during the joint conceptual workshop that the architecture really needed to resonate more with the Natchez neighborhood. And I hope that you can see that we're doing just that with the architectural elevations that we're showing here. We've added more brick all the way to the gables. Really adding more architectural detailing that resonated with the neighborhood. I think 906 Studios is really paying attention to that. Meredith Booker with 906 is here tonight if you have any questions. And then turning to the very last page on the, sorry, go up one. There were comments that the buildings that are fronting onto Natchez Street should be only 2 stories and not 2.5 stories. So I want to make sure that we articulate too that we have made that correction in the development plan. Those are 2-story buildings. And we still only have 2-story buildings facing onto Acton Street. The 3-story building is directly behind the H.G. Hill site. All 3 of these buildings are currently proposed as gable structures. So happy to answer any questions that you may have, even on the modification of standards. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
So one question I did have, and you got me some of the heights, but the height, this general area, and this is, I'm in favor of everything you've done. Love the architectural changes, and it's wonderful. Glad Planning Commission agrees. The 3-story building in the back of Denison is on that H.G. Hill site, or back to the H.G. Hill. It is now, I believe, if not under contract, or I don't know where it is in the process of the county, but it's happening.
In process.
In process. County's gonna be there. Anyway, we wanted to keep the height in this area. We've worked hard down at Margin to keep it under the height of the police station, I believe, is where that ended. And so this 3-story, I think, was going to end up being a little bit higher than the police station. But there appears to be a way that possibly we could do flat roof and keep it below the police station, so we don't have.
For everybody's knowledge, the current police station is approximately 38 feet high. With the gabled roof all the way to the top, this 3-story building would be approximately 44 feet tall. With a gabled roof, a parapet, with a parapet flat roof, we could lower our building to 34 foot 6 inches, and we would be below the 38 foot police station, and we're happy to do that, if that's something you want us to consider.
So I brought that up because I would like that. It's going to be on the back of some sort of county complex. It's not as visible probably to the exterior, the thoroughfares. Although I love the design, I'm sure they'll make some adjustments to make it very attractive. But I did want to thank you for looking into that, and I would like to keep that police station as kind of the height metric for us in that area. So this is one way of achieving that.
Alderman Potts.
Thanks, sir. Yeah, I just wanted to share with the board that number one, I want to thank Derwin for his hard work on all of this. Derwin, myself, and other members of the Housing Commission actually reviewed all of this in detail. And so the changes when we're talking about open space, we really tried to dig into that to make sure that there was enough open space for young people to be able to get out and be involved in the community there. So, in case you didn't add the numbers up, we're going to have updated housing of 602 new units in this area. So this is a substantial investment by the Housing Authority right now to help us move forward into the next generation in this community. So again, Derwin, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody in the Housing Commission as well for doing that, and everybody else that's been involved.
Alderman Caesar.
Regarding modification of standard on the parking, Greg, when we brought this to the joint planning commission and BOMA meeting, there was some maybe disagreement on street parking at that point on Natchez. Did we solidify whether there will be street parking, and is that a factor in your overall parking availability?
Sure. So on-street parking is required by the zoning ordinance for multifamily. It's required for any townhomes that are alley loaded. There was some concern that the on-street parking was going to be encroaching into the travel lanes of Natchez Street, and it wasn't clear in our previous presentations, but we made it clear at the Planning Commission that the travel lanes would remain as they are and the on-street parking would be inset into the proposed development.
I do have a little bit of a worry that that's aesthetically very different for that section of Natchez. I don't think there's any on-street parking anywhere else on Natchez, if I can think about it. So I'd want us just to think about what that does. Kind of you go from no on-street parking to this section of on-street parking and then back. So maybe the modification of standards, maybe we could look at modifying the standard of on-street parking requirement, but then that probably adjusts your modifier because I'm sure you factored those spaces into your overall
This is a very unique section of Natchez Street. You can kind of see from our aerial here, there's many, many lots along Natchez Street that are vacant.
Yeah.
So there is some redevelopment opportunity that could in the future mirror that on-street parking on the other side. So
appreciate that. Yep.
Item 15 is City of Franklin Contract 2026-0202 with Franklin Housing Authority for Parkland Impact Fee and Construction Agreement.
Good evening. I don't know why Joey couldn't have done this, but thank you, Joey. We'll work with him. Bless his heart. Denison as well as Iris Place, Mayor, both are parkland. One will have a pool, others will have playgrounds, trails, amenities within those. They're receiving 50% reimbursement for park offsets. Happy to answer any questions. Or Joey can.
Or Joey can. I tried to put it on him. He threw it off. Okay, we'll go to items 16, 17, and 18. Well, we'll just go to 16 and 17 because we'll ask Lisa to come back. Is ordinance 2026-16, an ordinance to rezone 7.68 acres from Plan PD District to Plan PD 18.85 District, property located north of West Meade Boulevard, west of Brookwood Avenue, located at 500 West Meade Boulevard, Iris Place PUD, established public hearing August 11, 2026. And then the next item has to do with the development plan and two modification standards. Joey.
Yes, thank you. This is going to sound extremely familiar because it is another FHA project. So this one is a proposal for the Iris Place PUD subdivision with 144 multifamily units on 7.68 acres for a proposal of 18.85 units per acre. So the plan proposes demolition of all existing buildings on the property and the construction of 5 new multifamily buildings. Envision Franklin places this in the mixed residential design concept, which does have a special consideration for projects or developments that match the Franklin Housing Authority's master plan. And there are 2 modifications of standards requests with this proposal, and they are carbon copies of the first 2 from the previous submittal. First one is for reduction in parking spaces just to 1.75 spaces per multifamily residential unit, which staff is recommending approval of, as did Planning Commission. And MOS number 2 is a request to modify the required natural area from 10% to 0% with a total of 15% open space, 5% to be programmed, 10% to be non-programmed. Same argument, same situation as the last one. So staff is recommending approval of MOS number 2, as did Planning Commission. Overall, we're recommending approval of both the rezoning and the development plan, as did Planning Commission unanimously. Thank you.
And again, Mr. Gamble.
Mayor, just want to let everybody know that our team is available for questions, but I did want to add something I forgot to mention with the last, but it's true to this as well. Both of these developments are greatly increasing the city's water infrastructure and delivery system within this area, creating redundancy that doesn't exist today, and bringing the water pressure up to the city of Franklin standard for fire hydrants and fire pressure systems. So just wanted to add that piece to this as well. Thank you.
Seeing no questions, we'll go to 18, which is the City of Franklin Contract 2026-00201 with Franklin Housing Authority for Parkland Impact Fee.
I think everybody's good.
Lisa said the same thing for Denson Place applies to Iris Place.
Thank you. You can't beat that. Item 19 is de-annexation contraction of 6 properties consisting of 837.04 acres located west of Hillsborough Road, north and south of MacHatcher Parkway. And it gives the map and parcel numbers there, which I won't read. Emily?
So on April 8th, the property owners of the Moore property, it's 6 properties consisting of 837 acres in the northwest portion of the City of Franklin NRUGB, petitioned the City of Franklin to de-annex under a certain section of Tennessee Code annotated. So I'm going to run through just a little information on that. So based on this section of state law, if the property is primarily used for agricultural purposes, and the owners are the same or descendants of those that family, and then if what is being de-annexed matches the original map of what was annexed, there is something in Tennessee State Code that allows this to happen automatically, essentially. And the applicants must provide documentation showing that the property's been used for agricultural uses in continuity, and that the owner's the same or descendants of that owner. And then we compared the maps to the original parcel map at the time of annexation. The only difference in this particular case is that MacHatcher goes through the site now, which is why the property was annexed originally, was to bring MacHatcher through, and there was some thought that there may be some additional development at that point in time, but the property owners made it clear they do not wish to develop, and they still do not support the original annexation of their property, and they wish to de-annex at this time under this particular part of state law. These are just some of the things that were included in the petition. Some of the IRS schedules and forms were required to be submitted. And Shauna, along with the law department and the planning department, reviewed all of these items in detail, and we found that they did meet Tennessee Code Annotated for this de-annexation. This is a map of the properties that are included in the de-annexation. It goes all the way up to the northwestern edge of our urban growth boundary and previous city limits, and goes down towards Mac Hatcher and includes 3 parcels that are south of Mac Hatcher as well. Those were not originally in the request for de-annexation, but as we determined, since they were originally part of the annexation, everything must be de-annexed in full to meet the state law. We did talk to the property owner that if at any point in time they do wish to come back into the city, there is an option for annexation, regardless of who the property owner may be, whether it's this family or any future sales of the property. So this is something at this point in time, de-annexation was desired, but there's always an option for future annexation if the property owner requests it. And then based on the dates of submittal, the petition for de-annexation was submitted on April 8th, and the de-annexation became effective on July 7th. We are not proposing to amend the UGB. Obviously, at this time, we're not going through that process. We wouldn't go through that process for another 2.5 to 3 years. But planning staff supports keeping this in the UGB. I'm happy to take any questions. Shauna and Eric are also here if you have questions for them.
It has happened.
It has happened. It is effective.
Yeah, so
Vice Mayor?
does this mean that there are going to be, so infrastructure plans, sewer lines, various things, that is,
Well, since it remains in the UGB, we still plan for it. Now, this is an area of our UGB that we will probably look at with our next update to Envision Franklin. And we may look at what design concepts are really applicable at this point, and it may be something that supports a lower density, if anything. But we will have to have those discussions moving forward. But because it remains in the UGB, we are not proposing immediate changes to any of the utility planning or land use planning at this time.
and there was a road that was supposed to go Monticello, was it Monticello that was connecting over the river? I mean, how does this now then will it affect all of our plans?
Well, that's up for debate as we move forward. We will start to look at those when we do updates to
regular
the plans. It is something to consider, but as long as it remains in the UGB and in our planning area, we may want to keep those things on the books should anything ever happen on the properties. And if nothing does, then those improvements are not required.
Yeah.
And they are still in the existing utility service areas continue to exist. So you still need to plan and consider how that works with the broader system.
Thanks.
Alderman Caesar.
Well, they've become de-annexed. My assumption is this does not move them out of the urban growth boundary.
Right.
No, it does not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item 20 is City of Franklin contract 2026-0267 with Franklin Housing Authority for up to $200,000 for infrastructure improvements for public housing units at 108 Natchez Street. Any questions about that?
This involves infrastructure for 8 voucher units, I believe. So, big night for Franklin Housing Authority.
Big night.
And we appreciate it. These are really important investments.
Item 21 is ordinance 2026-20, an ordinance prohibiting the discharge of firearms within 500 feet of school property.
And this is Rhonda Webb. I'm not sure if everyone has met. If you're on Beer Board, you've probably met Rhonda, but I'm not sure
I think
everybody.
so, but I haven't met everyone. So good evening, Mayor, board. So I will be presenting on item 21. So this is just a simple change in ordinance. Coming out of our last legislative session, the Tennessee Code annotated was changed in regards to prohibiting hunting. That's something that the city is not really allowed to do anymore. However, there's a caveat to where we are able to regulate the discharge of firearms within 500 feet of school property. And so this will change that, the ordinance would change that language in our code to be able to do that. And that's it. And if you have any questions?
Okay, item 22 is ordinance 2026-02, an ordinance to amend Title I, Chapter 9 of the Franklin Municipal Code relative to public records.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's nice to be on this side of
Yeah.
the podium for a change. Ordinance 2026-02 is just amending our city's public records policy. The current proposed revisions address changes to exceptions to the Tennessee citizenship requirements, labor charges following inspection, and some clerical components like address changes and title changes. There's also some new state legislation that's been encompassed in there as well. So, any questions, I'm happy to answer.
It's a good cleanup.
Any other business for the work session? If not, we're adjourned. We'll be back in 15 minutes.
Right on.